So I've been sitting on this for about 2 weeks trying to figure out if I should even post it, but I keep going in circles in my own head, and I need outside perspective from people who don't know any of us. We've been together 2 years, living together for 14 months in my apartment, and yeah, I keep saying my apartment because it is. My name on the lease, my furniture, my deposit. He moved in after about 10 months of dating because his roommate situation fell apart and he needed somewhere to stay while he figured things out. That was supposed to be temporary. Look, I know how this sounds already. I can hear you all typing the comments. But when you're in it, you don't see it the same way people on the outside do. Brett wasn't some obvious loser when I met him. He planned real dates. He seemed like he had his life together even if things were a little rocky at the moment. The money stuff happened slowly. First, he was short on his half of rent because of car trouble. Then groceries became mostly my thing because his hours got cut. Then I was covering utilities and his phone bill because he was between jobs, and what was I supposed to do? Let his phone get shut off. Each thing on its own seemed like just helping my partner through a rough patch. My parents went through hard times when I was a kid and they made it work by supporting each other. I thought that's what you do. Anyway, let me tell you about Kara because she's important. Kara has been Brett's best friend since high school. She was at the cookout where we met through mutual friends. She's one of those girls who makes sure you know how long she's known your boyfriend. Every story from his past involves her somehow. Every inside joke, every memory you weren't there for. I tried really hard with her. Invited her to stuff, suggested group hangouts. Never once told Brett he couldn't see her because I'm not that girlfriend. I refuse to be the insecure, jealous type who can't handle her man having female friends. About 2 months ago, Brett started being different. Not in some huge, obvious way, but in all these small things that added up. He was suddenly really into working out, which fine, whatever, but he'd never cared before, and now it was 4 or 5 times a week, sometimes at weird hours. He'd leave the room to take calls. He was snappy with me over nothing. I'd ask what he wanted for dinner, and he'd act like I was interrogating him. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. Couples go through phases, right? This was just a rough patch. So about 3 weeks ago, I left work early because I had a headache that wouldn't quit, and I just needed to go home and lie down. Brett wasn't supposed to be there. He'd told me he was helping his buddy Scott with something. I came in through the back because I always park in the alley behind our building, and I was going to just crash on the couch with the lights off. But when I came in through the kitchen, I could hear Brett's voice from the living room. He was on the phone with someone, and he was laughing about something, and I almost just walked in to say hey, but something made me stop. I don't know what. Call it intuition or whatever, but I just stood there in the kitchen doorway listening. And I heard him say my name, not in a good way. He was telling whoever was on the phone that I was driving him crazy, that I was always asking questions, that I couldn't just leave him alone for 5 minutes. Then he laughed again and said something like, "Don't worry, babe, I'm handling it." Babe. He doesn't call me babe. He's never called me babe. I stood there frozen trying to process what I was hearing. He kept going, talking about how he just needed a few more months to get his stuff together and then he could finally get out. Saying he was only sticking around because the situation was convenient. Saying I was desperate enough to believe anything he told me. Then he said it. The thing I can't get out of my head no matter how hard I try. He said he couldn't wait to dump my fat ass and find someone actually worth his time. He laughed when he said it. I don't remember deciding to walk into the living room. I just did. And Brett's face when he saw me standing there when he realized I'd heard everything, I wish I could describe it. This flash of oh shit before he tried to rearrange his expression into something normal. He told whoever was on the phone he had to go. Hung up fast. Then he tried to act like nothing happened. Asked why I was home early. Said his call was just with Scott. They were joking around. I probably misheard whatever I thought I heard. I asked him who Babe was. I asked him why he was talking about dumping me. I asked him what the hell was going on. And here's where I need you all to understand that Brett has always been good at talking his way out of things. It's like his superpower. Making you feel crazy for questioning him. Making you think you misunderstood. Making everything your fault somehow. He started going on about how I was taking things out of context. That he and Scott joke around like that all the time. That guys say stupid stuff when they're venting and it doesn't mean anything. He said I was being paranoid again. That this was exactly what he was talking about on the phone. That I was always looking for problems where there weren't any. I told him to call Scott back then, right now. Put him on speaker so I could hear them joke around about dumping me. Brett got quiet. I said I wasn't stupid. I said I heard him say babe. I said I heard him talk about getting out and finding someone worth his time. I asked him point blank if he was seeing someone else. He denied it, obviously. Said I was hearing things, making assumptions, but his voice was different. Not as smooth as usual, like he was running out of moves. I grabbed his phone off the coffee table where he'd put it down. He lunged for it immediately, which honestly told me everything I needed to know, but I was faster. I went straight to his messages. And there it was. Right at the top, Kara, sounding me desperate and pathetic. Complaining about having to pretend he cared about me. Her responding with laughing emojis and telling him he deserved better. And pictures. Pictures I won't describe because I'm trying not to throw up, but you can probably guess. Brett was yelling at me to give him his phone back. Saying I had no right. Saying I was invading his privacy. I just kept scrolling, reading message after message of them mocking me, making fun of things I told him in confidence, laughing about how easy I was to manipulate. I threw his phone at him, then I told him to get the hell out of my apartment. And this is where Brett transformed into someone I'd never seen before. He started screaming, calling me a psycho for going through his phone, saying I was a stalker and a control freak, saying this was exactly why he couldn't stand being with me anymore and I'd just proven everything he told Kara about me was true. I tried to stay calm. I really did. I told him he didn't get to flip this around, that I'd seen everything, that I knew about him and Kara, that he'd been taking my money and sleeping in my bed and telling me he loved me while laughing behind my back. He wouldn't engage with any of it, just kept screaming about how I violated his privacy, how no normal person does what I did, how I was sick in the head. He grabbed my laptop off the table, not his, mine, and threw it against the wall. The screen cracked and everything went black. Then he started packing. I watched him stuff his clothes into garbage bags because he didn't even own luggage. 2 years together, and everything this man had fit in 3 garbage bags. The whole time he was packing, he kept going about how I was going to regret this, how he was going to tell everyone what I did, how Kara was right about me all along. The last thing he said before he walked out was that I had no idea who I was dealing with, and then he was gone. For about an hour, I just sat in my apartment staring at nothing. The man I'd been supporting for over a year. The man I'd defended to everyone. The man I thought I was going to marry. He'd been cheating on me with his best friend while calling me fat and desperate enough to believe anything. That night, I texted him asking if we could talk calmly about this. Nothing. I called. Voicemail. I tried again the next morning. Nothing. Then I saw it on Instagram. Brett and Kara. At what I assume was her apartment. Him on the couch with his arm around her. Her kissing his cheek. Caption said something like, "Finally where I belong," with a little heart. I called him probably 20 times in a row. Sent texts I shouldn't have. I was losing it and I knew it, but I couldn't stop. 2 years. 14 months of paying for everything. And he was posting couple content with Kara less than 24 hours later. He finally texted back, but only to tell me to stop or he'd file for a restraining order. A couple days later, I went to check our joint account. We'd opened it about 7 months ago for shared expenses, which looking back was just me depositing money, while he contributed basically nothing. I figured I'd close it out. The account was empty. He'd withdrawn everything. Over $4,000 that was almost entirely mine. Gone. I called the bank. They confirmed the withdrawal was made the day after he left. Nothing they could do since his name was on the account. Technically legal even though it was basically theft. I tried contacting him about the money. Nothing. Tried reaching Kara. Blocked everywhere. And that's when Brett's mom Janet entered the picture. Janet and I had always gotten along. She told me multiple times how glad she was Brett found someone stable. Called me her future daughter-in-law once. Invited me to every family thing. About a week after everything happened, Janet called me. She kept apologizing over and over. Said she'd seen the Instagram posts and she was horrified. Said Brett had called her acting normal a few days before and she had no idea he'd left me or that he was with Kara now. I told her everything. The phone call I overheard, the messages, the money, all of it came pouring out. She said she was going to talk to Brett's dad, Roger, and they were going to handle this. That Brett was going to face consequences. I didn't know what that meant. Didn't know if she was just saying it or if she meant it. But here's where I am now. It's been about 3 weeks since everything happened. Brett is still with Kara. Still posting their couple stuff like they didn't blow up a 2-year relationship. My laptop is destroyed. My savings are gone. I'm living in an apartment full of memories of someone who never loved me at all. I haven't heard anything concrete from Janet since that first call, but she said she needed time to figure things out with Roger. I don't know what to expect, honestly. Brett's 24, but still, what are his parents really going to do? If anyone has advice on the money thing, I'm all ears. Small claims court seems complicated, and I don't know if I have enough proof since his name was on the account too. My mom keeps saying to just let it go and move on, but $4,000 is a lot to let go. Anyway, that's where things are. 2 years gone on a man who was laughing at me the entire time with the girl he swore was just a friend. I'll update if anything happens with Janet and Roger, but I'm not expecting much. Update. Okay, so I did not expect my last post to blow up like that. I've been trying to respond to comments, but there's just too many. First, let me address some things from the comments. A bunch of people told me to stop checking Brett and Kara's social media, and yeah, I know that's the healthy thing to do, but it's easier said than done when your brain is broken and you keep wanting to torture yourself. I've gotten better about it, though. I unfollowed both of them and moved their profiles to my restricted list, so I have to actively go looking if I want to see anything. Also, someone asked why I didn't just kick Brett out sooner if he wasn't paying rent. And honestly, looking back, I don't have a good answer for that. I think I kept believing things would get better. He always had a reason, always had an excuse. When you love someone, you make allowances. You tell yourself it's temporary. You convince yourself that being supportive is what good partners do. I'm not saying I was right, I'm just saying that's how I got there. Okay, so the update. Remember how Janet called me and said she was going to talk to Roger about handling things? I honestly didn't expect much from that. Brett is 24 years old, and what are his parents really going to do? Ground him. But I underestimated how seriously they were taking this. 4 days after my original post, I got a text from Janet asking if I could come over to their house to talk. She said Roger wanted to be there too, and that they had some things they needed to discuss with me. I almost said no because what was the point? But Sophia convinced me to go. She said at the very least maybe they could help me get my money back or make Brett take accountability. So I drove out to Janet and Roger's place. They live about 40 minutes outside the city in this nice suburb with big yards and American flags on every porch. I'd been there probably a dozen times over the 2 years I was with Brett. Holiday dinners, summer barbecues, Roger's birthday last year. Walking up to that front door felt surreal knowing everything that had happened. Janet answered before I could even knock. Roger was in the living room sitting in his recliner and he stood up when I came in, which he'd never done before. There was this weird formality to the whole thing that made me nervous. We sat down and Janet started by apologizing again. She kept saying she was so sorry that she had no idea Brett was capable of this. Roger didn't say much at first. He just sat there with this look on his face like he was trying to hold something in. Then Janet told me they'd confronted Brett. And this is where it gets interesting. Apparently they'd driven to Kara's apartment 2 days after Janet first called me. They didn't tell Brett they were coming, just showed up. And Brett tried to act like everything was normal, like him leaving me and immediately moving in with Kara was just a natural thing that happened, like it was no big deal. Janet said she asked him point blank about the messages I'd found. The ones where he called me desperate and fat and said he was using me for money. And Brett's response was to get angry at them for believing me over him. He told his own parents that I was exaggerating, that I'd taken things out of context, that I was trying to turn his family against him because I couldn't accept that he'd moved on. Roger spoke up then. He said he asked Brett to show him the messages himself if I was lying. And Brett refused. Said it was none of their business and that he didn't have to defend himself against accusations from his crazy ex. Janet said while they were at Kara's apartment she noticed something. Brett's stuff wasn't just scattered around like he'd moved in recently. His clothes were in Kara's closet. His toothbrush was in her bathroom. There were photos of them together on her fridge. Photos that looked like they'd been there for a while. Janet asked Brett directly how long he'd actually been with Kara. And he lied. Said they only got together after he left me. That nothing happened before that. That Kara was just a friend who was helping him through a hard time. Kara was standing right there apparently. And Janet said she saw her face change when Brett said that. Like she wasn't expecting him to still be lying about it in front of everyone. So Janet did something that I honestly respect the hell out of. She turned to Kara and asked her the same question. How long had this actually been going on? And Kara, whether because she was caught off guard or because she was tired of covering for Brett's lies, told the truth. She said they'd been sleeping together for 4 months. 4 months. While Brett was still living with me. While he was still taking my money and sleeping in my bed and telling me he loved me. 4 months of cheating and lying and making me feel insane for even suspecting something was wrong. I sat there in Janet's living room and I swear I forgot how to breathe for a second. 4 months. That's longer than I thought. That means it started around the time he got really into the gym. All those late night workouts. All those times he said he was going to Scott's place. All those showers the second he got home. It all made sense now. Janet said Brett completely lost it when Kara admitted the truth. He started screaming at her for throwing him under the bus, for not backing up his story, for humiliating him in front of his parents. Kara tried to defend herself. Said she was tired of lying about it. Said she didn't see the point anymore now that they were together openly. And then Brett said something that Janet repeated to me, and I'm still processing it honestly. He told Kara that none of this would have happened if she'd just kept her mouth shut. That the whole plan was to get me to break up with him so he didn't have to be the bad guy. That Kara was supposed to stay in the background until I ended things, and then they could be together without any drama. The whole plan. This wasn't just Brett being a garbage person who fell for someone else. He wanted me to find out. He wanted me to leave him so he could play the victim and act like I was the one who ended things. I asked Janet if she was sure that's what he said, and she nodded. Roger confirmed it too. He said Brett kept going on about how the plan would have worked if Kara had just been patient, if I hadn't been so nosy, if his parents had just minded their own business. I cannot describe to you the feeling of hearing that someone you loved was actively plotting against you while pretending to be your partner. Roger told me that after Brett's outburst at Kara's apartment, he gave him an ultimatum. Either Brett pays back the money he took from our joint account, apologizes to me properly, and takes real accountability for what he did, or Roger and Janet are cutting him off completely. No more financial help, no more family dinners, no more being part of the family until he makes this right. I didn't expect them to go that hard, honestly. Brett is their only son. But Roger said he didn't raise a con artist, and he sure as hell didn't raise someone who would treat a woman like garbage and then play victim. He said if Brett wanted to act like he had no family, then fine. He'd know what that actually felt like. Brett apparently laughed at them, told them they were being dramatic, that they'd get over it in a few weeks, that they always did. He said Roger and Janet had threatened to cut him off before and it never stuck. That's when Roger told him about the public toilets. Okay, so context. Roger owns a small business that does property maintenance for commercial buildings. Office parks, strip malls, that kind of thing. One of their contracts is for a public park and community center, and part of that contract is cleaning the restrooms. It's literally the worst job in the whole company, and they usually have to pay extra to get anyone to do it. Roger told Brett that if he wanted any relationship with his family going forward, if he wanted to be welcome at holidays, if he ever wanted another dollar of help from them, he was going to work that restroom cleaning job until he'd earned back triple what he stole from me. Triple. That's over $12,000. At whatever hourly rate the lowest paid employee makes, that's months of scrubbing toilets. Brett apparently tried to argue, said it was humiliating, said he wasn't going to degrade himself over some money that was half his anyway. Roger told him he had 1 week to decide, or the offer was off the table, and he could consider himself disowned. 1 week. I'm writing this update now, and Brett has about 3 days left to make that decision. Now here's where I need advice from you all, because I genuinely don't know what to do. Part of me wants to accept whatever repayment I can get. That money was mine and I deserve it back. I could really use it honestly because my laptop is still broken and my savings are basically gone and I've been stressing about finances constantly. But another part of me doesn't want Brett to be able to buy his way out of this with his parents' plan. Like if he scrubs toilets for a few months and pays me back, does that mean everything's forgiven? Does that mean he learned his lesson? Because I don't think cleaning restrooms is going to make him a better person. I think he's going to do the bare minimum to get his family back and then go right back to being the same manipulative idiot he's always been. Also, there's the question of whether he'll even agree to it. Brett has always been lazy and entitled, and the idea of him voluntarily doing manual labor for months seems almost impossible. Kara makes decent money from what I understand, so maybe he thinks he can just keep living off her instead. Trade one woman's apartment for another. I keep wondering what Kara is thinking through all this. She's been with a guy for 4 months who she knew was using another woman for money. She watched him lie to his own parents' faces about their relationship. She heard him admit that she was supposed to just stay quiet until he was ready to discard me, and she's still with him. Does she think she's special? Does she think he won't do the same thing to her eventually? Sophia thinks I should take whatever money I can get and then completely cut Brett and his whole family out of my life. She says engaging with any of them is just keeping me stuck in this situation. She might be right, but it's complicated because Janet has been genuinely kind to me through this, and I feel weird just ghosting her after everything she's done. My mom has a different take. She thinks Roger and Janet are only doing this because they're embarrassed about how their son turned out and they want to save face. She says the toilet cleaning thing is more about punishing Brett for humiliating them than it is about making things right with me. And maybe she's not wrong about that, but does it matter if the end result is the same? There's also the issue of Brett potentially not accepting the deal at all. If he calls his parents bluff and they actually disown him, what does that mean for me? Do I just never see any of that money? Do I have to pursue small claims court after all? Someone in the comments of my last post mentioned that I could probably get a judgment against him, but actually collecting the money is a whole different challenge, especially if he's unemployed and living with Kara. Speaking of family drama, there's been some fallout in Brett's extended family too. Janet mentioned that she told her sister what happened, and her sister told everyone else, and now half the family is talking about it. Brett's cousin Eric apparently messaged him to call him out, and Brett blocked him. His grandmother is devastated because she thought Brett was finally getting his life together with me. I hate that I've become this story that Brett's whole family is gossiping about. I hate that people I've met at family gatherings know all this personal, humiliating stuff about me now. But I also can't really be mad at Janet for telling people because, honestly, Brett deserves to have his reputation reflect who he actually is. One more thing before I wrap this up. Brett texted me 2 days ago. First contact since he told me to stop blowing up his phone or he'd file a restraining order. The text said that his parents had lost their minds and that this was all my fault for getting them involved. He said I'd poisoned his family against him and that he would never forgive me for that. He said I was going to regret making an enemy out of him and that Kara was more of a woman than I'd ever be. I didn't respond. I wanted to. I typed out like 15 different responses ranging from reasonable to absolutely unhinged, but I didn't send any of them because what would be the point? He's not going to suddenly realize he's wrong. He's not going to apologize. He's going to keep blaming everyone else for the consequences of his own actions until the day he dies, probably. But I did screenshot the text and send it to Janet, because if he's going to threaten me, I want his parents to know about it. I'll update again after Brett's deadline passes. Either he's going to agree to work off his debt, and I'll have to figure out how to handle getting payments from my ex's parents, or he's going to refuse and get disowned, and I'll have to figure out whether it's worth pursuing this in court. Either way, I'm not letting him win. I'm not going to be the pathetic, desperate placeholder he thought I was. I'm going to get through this, and I'm going to come out stronger, and someday I'm going to find someone who actually deserves me. Last update. Okay, so you all have been blowing up my inbox asking what happened, and honestly, I've been putting off writing this because every time I sit down to type it out, I get worked up all over again. But here it is, the finale of this absolute dumpster fire. So Brett's deadline came and went, and shocker of all shockers, he told his parents to go screw themselves. Said he wasn't going to degrade himself scrubbing toilets over some money that was half his anyway. Roger told him fine. Don't bother coming home for Thanksgiving or Christmas or ever until he's ready to act like a grown man. Janet backed him up even though I know it was killing her. Brett's response was to post a whole rant on Instagram about toxic family dynamics and how blood doesn't mean loyalty. Classic victim mode. Everyone who knew the situation knew exactly what he was talking about. I figured that was it. He made his choice, his family cut him off. I'd probably never see that money. I was starting to accept that maybe $4,000 was just the price of learning who Brett really was. Then 5 days ago, Brett showed up at my apartment. I wasn't expecting him. I was literally in sweatpants eating leftover on my couch when I heard the knock. I looked through the peephole and there he was, just standing there looking around like he was nervous someone would see him. He started talking immediately. Said he needed to explain, that I never let him explain, that everyone was making him out to be this monster when I didn't even understand what was really going on. I told him he had 5 minutes and then I was calling the cops. He started going on about how the stuff with Kara wasn't what I thought. That yeah, they'd been talking, but it was just venting, just blowing off steam. That he never meant any of those things he said about me. That Kara was the one who escalated everything, who pushed him to leave me, who convinced him I was holding him back. I asked him if he seriously came here to blame Kara for his own words, for calling me desperate and fat, for saying he was using me for money, for laughing about me with her for months. He got this look on his face, frustrated, like I was being difficult on purpose. He said I was taking everything out of context, that couples vent to their friends all the time, that if I went through anyone's private messages, I'd find stuff that sounds bad without the full picture. He said the real problem was that I violated his privacy and then ran to his parents like a child instead of talking to him directly. I reminded him that I did try to talk to him, that he screamed at me, threw my laptop against the wall, and stormed out, that his idea of talking was calling me a psycho-stalker and threatening a restraining order. He said I pushed him to that I was hysterical and he didn't know how to handle it, that if I'd just stayed calm, maybe they could have worked through it. I cannot describe to you how insane it is to stand there listening to the person who betrayed you try to rewrite history in real time. Every sentence out of his mouth was designed to make me doubt what I saw with my own eyes, to make me think maybe I overreacted, maybe I was the problem, but I'm not that girl anymore. I told him to get out. I said I wasn't doing this, I wasn't going to stand here and let him gaslight me into thinking any of this was my fault. He made his choices. He said those words. He took that money. And now he was homeless and broke and desperate enough to show up at my door looking for what exactly? Forgiveness. Another chance. Someone else to mooch off of. He started yelling about how I ruined his life, how his parents won't talk to him because of me, how Kara kicked him out because she found out how much drama came with being with him and she didn't want to deal with it. I told him Kara kicked him out because she realized he expected her to pay for everything, just like I did. That maybe the problem isn't every woman in his life. Maybe the problem is him. He said I had no idea what I was talking about, that him and Kara were fine until I got his family involved, that they were going to work things out until Janet called Kara and told her everything and made her think Brett was some kind of con artist. I actually laughed in his face. I asked him if he hurt himself. Even now, even after losing everything, he couldn't take responsibility for a single thing. It was my fault, Kara's fault, his parents' fault, everyone's fault except the guy who spent 4 months cheating and lying and stealing. He called me a bee, told me I was going to die alone because no man would ever want someone as cold and vindictive as me. Said Kara was right about me all along, that I was pathetic and desperate and he should have left me sooner. I told him to get out of my apartment before I called the police, and I had my phone in my hand ready to do it. He left. That was 5 days ago. I've been checking over my shoulder ever since. Not because I think he'd actually do anything, but because that look in his eyes when he left was something I'd never seen before. Pure hatred. Like I was his enemy now. Like everything that happened was a war. And I'd won, and he'd never forgive me for it. 2 days after that, Janet texted me. She'd heard from Brett that he came to see me, that I refused to listen, that I threw him out. She wanted to know if I was okay. I told her what actually happened, that he showed up uninvited and spent 20 minutes trying to convince me everything was my fault before threatening me on his way out. She said Roger was furious when he found out Brett went to my place. Said they were considering whether they needed to do something more serious if he kept escalating. Then she told me Brett finally agreed to the toilet cleaning job. Apparently being homeless for 2 weeks with no money and no one willing to take him in finally broke through whatever pride he had left. He called Roger yesterday and said he'd do it. Said he'd work off the debt if it meant having somewhere to live. Roger's making him start this week. Every morning at 5 a.m. cleaning the public restrooms at some park. Every penny going toward what he owes me until he hits triple the amount he took. I'm living for this. Janet asked if I wanted updates on his progress. I told her yes. Send me everything. Send me photos if you can. I want to know every single time Brett has to get on his knees and scrub a toilet that strangers have been using all day. I want to know when he complains. I want to know when he tries to quit. I want all of it. She laughed a little when I said that. Told me she'd keep me posted. That park is like 20 minutes from my apartment. I already looked it up. The community center opens at 6 a.m., which means Brett has to be there before that to clean everything. Which means if I happen to wake up early one morning and go for a walk in that area around 5:30 a.m., I might just run into him. And if I happen to have my phone ready to record a little video of my ex-boyfriend in a janitor uniform scrubbing public toilets at dawn, well, my friends have been asking for updates. My group chat would absolutely lose their minds. I've already got the caption planned out in my head. Janet mentioned that Brett keeps complaining to anyone who will listen about how I ruined his life by involving his family. That if I'd just broken up with him quietly, none of this would have happened. Good. I want him to think about me every single morning when that alarm goes off at 4 a.m. I want my name in his mouth while he's elbow deep in a toilet bowl.